Here we go. So now that we've greeted each other, I would like to just do a little bit of logistical things here to start us off. And one is to just talk a little bit about privacy and the fact that we are in this community together. Vicky and Tina can't be here tonight, but they will watch the recording. Oh, and Mary's here too. Welcome, Mary. And so let's talk a little bit about privacy. This idea that we are in this together and we are talking about and writing about personal experience. And one of the most important principles for us is this sense that we are on each other's side. We are helping each other. We are trying to protect each other. So part of that is protecting each other's privacy. That in fact, the thing you don't want to do is to go take somebody's story outside of this classroom and start talking about it to somebody who's not part of this classroom. And there's two reasons for that. One is that it's a small, small world. You would be amazed how many people know people who know people. And, it's in this digital age, it takes, 20 seconds for somebody to go, oh my God, I just heard this story about so-and-so. Is that so-and-so who lives in, Yellowknife or whatever, it's okay. And then they pass it to their friend who then passes it to somebody, right? So we just, at that level, we want people to feel protection. We want to protect each other so that we can actually be more forthcoming. We can be a little more frank about our experience. So that's very important. And then the other thing is the idea that this is your experience. You own it. You own the rights to it, so to speak. So you don't want somebody using it, even if it would never get back to you, even if it's somebody who we'll never meet. You just want a sense of protection around your story. Now, I'm not saying you couldn't change the details and say, well, I did once hear a story about somebody who worked in a, natural history museum and blah, blah, blah. And you could maybe share the essence of the story without any of the identifying details. But you don't want to say, oh yeah, I was in a class, and in this class, there's this person, and they said this story, and that's what we really want to avoid. So I'd just like you to take a moment and feel that kind of protection for each other. And take it into your heart, so to speak. Is there any questions about that? It's pretty straightforward. Okay, great. Moving on, was anybody able to hear the story, the audio recording of the story? Okay. When Lisa was, anybody else? Did you get an email with a link to, oh, Robert did too? If you didn't get a chance to, don't worry about it. I'm more interested in the technical aspect of being able to click on that link and listen to the story. So if you haven't had a chance to listen to it, please do, actually. I think it's an important part of our course to listen to this 4-part story I'm going to tell you. Each week I'll give you a new episode. And partly the reason I bring it up, excuse me, is because I actually want us to be able to do this with our own writing. And I came up with this idea, instead of just posting our writing, which is, excuse me, which is fine, and we can post our writing. You could always just copy your writing and paste it into a post on the forums. But I thought it would just be very intimate and warm to read our writing to each other. So I came up with a method for us to do that. And I just want to quickly go through this method and kind of give you a basis in how to do it. Now, it's optional. So if you're intimidated by technology and you feel like, oh God, this is going to be so hard and I don't want to do it, that's fine. You don't have to do it. But I do want to give people the opportunity. So I'm going to share some instructions I wrote here. If I can find them here. Where is that? Goodness. There it is. Okay. Can you see this? Now this is actually within our course. So if I go back to the course homepage, there's your course homepage that you've seen before. And in our course content, it's called Recording and Posting Your Own Audio Recordings. And I want to say the idea here is not to record, for 25 minutes, but to just give us a little taste. Give us a 5 or 10 minute snippet. It could be a 1 minute snippet if you wanted to just share a little short snippet. And when you do this method, it will be sent out via email to everyone in this room. So that's the idea, is that you'll easily be able to share with each other. Now, the method here, and I'm sorry if this is a little bit practical, we'll get on to the fun part here in a moment. The method here is to go to a particular website called Vocaroo, and there's a link right there to it. So there's Vocaroo. And as you can see, it's got one big button there. And when you click that button, you start recording. So right now, if I click that button, it's going to ask if I can let it use my website, and I'm going to say yes. And already it's recording. So if I had a piece of writing right now, I would be recording what I'm saying. And you go ahead and you do your piece of writing, and then when you get done, you just click the same button again. And right there is a 15-second recording. Okay? And you can watch this video again, because I'll send out the instructions, or I'll send out a recording of this class, right? So you can watch this again. And then there's this save and share. And this is all written down on that page, step by step, but I just wanted to show you how easy it was. Now, this gobbledygook right there is the address of your recording you just made. And the easy way to copy that is just to click this little button to the right, these two squares. And when I do, it tells me I've copied that link. Okay, so then that's all I need to do on Vocaroo. I've recorded it and I've copied it. Now, when I go back to our class, there's the link on every sidebar to the forums, the discussion forums, right? And when I click that, it takes me right into our forums. And I don't know if you've even been in here yet, but this is a good way for us to keep in touch with each other, even going forward after the class is done. So you can see here's the one I did with the Life of Milarepa story. You can click in there or look in your email to find the link to that. But here, down underneath the list of topics, is the form to create your own listing, your own post, as they're called. And you can put your title up there. And you might write something here like, this is a piece, a piece about my grandmother. or, whatever you want to say there. And then you paste. And, some of you may not have pasted before, but hopefully some of you have. And I said you might want to Google that. If you're not sure how to paste, you could Google, Macintosh laptop, how do I paste, or something like that, and you'll get instructions. And it's a good basic skill. And then you just paste, and there's that address of your recording right there. So the last piece to do here, and we're almost done, we're very close to done, is to hit the submit button. It's quite a ways down here on the right. And if you don't click that, it won't save it. So you want to click that submit button. And what that will do is that will send this little message out to everybody, this message here, via email. And then all they have to do is click on that link and they can go hear you reading your piece. So that's it. And I know that seemed like a lot of steps, but it's actually pretty quick and easy to do. And again, back on our website is step-by-step instructions for all of that, including which buttons to click. And you could even print this page out if you needed to remind yourself, and you could hold it in your hands while you did all of this. So I just want to make that an option going forward in the class, and say that I just think it would be kind of interesting. And if you would be willing to share some of your writing with the whole class, I think everyone would benefit. Is there any questions about that? All right. And if you have questions down the line, just contact me. Yeah, Mary.
All my writing right now has been off the top of my head, and I haven't gone back and edited it, or I haven't done a thing to it. Do you want that kind of stuff, or do you want it once we've worked something over?
No, I think whatever you feel like you want to share, that's great. It doesn't have to be perfect at all. In fact, and I really want to emphasize this again, this particular class is not about perfecting writing. It's just really not. This is about the depth of our connection with our experience. So, I mean, you could share something where you say, you know what, I don't even know what I'm talking about in this piece, but I feel like there's something there and I'm trying to get to it. So that's what's going on here. And I'm just going to start reading, and you read for 4 or 5 minutes if you want, or whatever amount of time there. And if you want to say something else afterwards, you can. Okay?
About how long does Vocaroo let you read?
That is a good question. I will look into that. I'll look into that and post that in the forums.
Thanks.
Yeah, thanks. Okay, any last comments or questions on that? All right. So moving on, now that we've done our logistical things, let's actually settle in for a moment. Let's do our opening mindfulness exercise. So go ahead and just take a moment, and you could even lower your eyes a bit. And just arrive in the room. I wanted to do this after we did all the computer stuff, right? You feel your adrenaline spiking talking about all the computer stuff. Now you can just settle. And I want you to really particularly connect in with your body, like we talked about last time. Just touch, that sense of touch in your body. Maybe you can feel your heart beating. You can feel the temperature in the room against your skin, on your face and your hands. Maybe you just ate a meal and you can feel it in your stomach. Maybe you feel your eyelids sliding over your eyes. Or the feeling of your fingernails on the ends of your fingers. You can just relax into that sense of touch. There's something very grounding about touch. It's not fancy. It's very earthy. And then let's add in our emotions. So feel your heart. Open your awareness to whatever is coming up right now, right in the present moment. Not yesterday, not tomorrow, just right now. And maybe that's very obvious, or maybe it's very subtle, very quiet. Maybe it's not one emotion, maybe it's multiple emotions. Maybe it's emotions you don't even have words for, just subtle, changing. Who knows? Just let yourself be curious. And then let's look into our mind. The body's still there, the emotions are still there, but just look into our mind for a moment. What's going on? Is it really clear, or is it a little bit foggy today? Or is there a lot of things going on? It's like a windstorm. Or maybe it's like a very calm day at the ocean side when the water is flat. Maybe it's a little bit of this and a little bit of that. And you can just look. And now let's bring all of that together. So just feel that sense of touch all over in your body. And see what's coming up with your emotions. And then include your mind. It's very simple. Okay. That's a very good way to arrive. And it's very simple. It's a very simple method coming out of the mindful communication teachings. That body, heart, and mind. It's so easy to do, no matter where you are, no matter the context. You could be waiting in line at the bank, or you could be waiting in line at a prison to visit your loved one who's been locked up, or you could be waiting in line. You could be doing whatever, right? Doesn't matter. You can just check in with yourself, ground yourself, and come back. So I wanted to say a little bit about the idea that we're going kind of slow. It might feel quite slow to you. And, you know, well, like, what about all this writing? What's going to happen? When are we going to get at it and to, you know, start to produce lots of writing? And I wanted to actually advocate for going slow. You know, sowing the seeds for this exploration is more important to getting those seeds in place and taking care of them properly will produce tremendous benefit down the line. And by benefit, I actually mean insight that can produce tremendous insight. And so often we want to jump to the end of the process. We want to jump to the insight itself. Yeah, but I just want to figure out all my stuff. That's not how it works. That's never how it works. It's our journey. And we're going to talk a lot about journey today. We're going to do an exercise around the journey. So this slowness is on purpose. And I really want you to hang in there with your experience. And if you want to go more quickly and you want to start producing a lot of writing, by all means, please do so and share some with us. But I also want to encourage you, stay with yourself through that process. Don't think about the end product, think about the journey. Focus on the journey. And if you need more and you feel like, okay, I'm just not getting this, please reach out to me and we can have a conversation. I'm happy to meet with you. So, in light of this slow journey, I wanted to see if anybody wanted to share anything that they'd written thus far. And it could be that you just don't feel comfortable yet, and that's fine. But I thought somebody might be excited. And this could be short, right? In this context, this could only, maybe this is 2 minutes. But I think it would be exciting, maybe a little bit energizing to hear somebody's writing. And, you know, it maybe in this context, maybe not something like too intense. You know, if you're writing about like pretty heavy stuff, like maybe that's not right now that we want to share that. Maybe we want to give people the privacy to listen to that, you know, in their own space. But here together, maybe just something that's in development. So any sparks of inspiration, and it's really okay if nobody has any, but I wanted to give the opportunity. Did I see a hand up there, Robert? Oops, you're still muted.
Well, I can read the piece that I posted. Is that what you're talking about, or something else?
I was thinking something else because I think others have seen Robert's post, right? Yeah, like something. Did anybody get to do any homework? And it's fine if you didn't. If you didn't do your homework, no, it's actually fine. That's optional. All right, Kathy. Yeah, you're muted. Oops, you're muted there.
Okay. I transferred what I was writing in class the other day and it elaborated on it on my computer, which I, of course, I don't have that in front of me now. But I thought I'd just take a snippet of saying that when we were children, I'm from a big family and we lived at Lake Tahoe each summer. We went up the day school stopped and returned the day school started. So we had a wonderful summer up there. And I think of how our father just came up on weekends. So my mother was up there with the children and she would let us get on our bikes and in the evening bicycle 4 miles to Kings Beach where there was a movie theater. And here we were with our bikes with our little headlamps driving along or riding along a 2-lane highway. In those days, it was pretty simple. And we'd be riding back at dusk. So it was getting dark. And I think of the trust that my mother had to allow us to do that. To me, I would never have allowed my children out on the highway at Tahoe or riding a bicycle at night. But it was a great adventure for us. It was a chance to really reach out and spread our wings in a dangerous situation. That's all.
Great, thank you. Thank you for sharing that. I think that's a really powerful story when you really think about that.
Mm.
How old were you at
Well,
that time?
I would have been about 8.
8 years old.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
there were younger and older sisters too. The oldest was 6 years older than I was, so it was an adventure for sure.
Well, and it's an adventure, but it's also, when you think of it from the inside, from being that 8-year-old self, there's so much that's going on,
Mhm.
right? You've got this adventure. I mean, going along a highway with your bicycle, and I'm guessing at times a highway around Lake Tahoe didn't have big margins on the side of the highway, right? It might have been right down on the road. You might have been right up against the traffic
Mm.
going quickly. And I'm guessing no helmets and things back then.
Oh, no.
No, right? Not a chance. And then all the sibling stuff that's going on, right?
Mhm.
Brothers and sisters together, and issues of who's leader and who's following and who's making the decisions and all of that, right?
Yes.
And
Actually, it was
then
never a question of who was in charge. My oldest sister took that role.
aha. So that's it. There's so many different things. I bring this up, not just because it's an interesting story by itself, but just because for us as writers, you could see different angles to explore there. Even that, actually, like that your oldest sister was the leader and everybody knew that.
Mm.
That's interesting all by itself.
Mm.
What was that like? How did that manifest? Was it something you could hear in her voice? Was that something in her posture? Was that, something that, was enforced? Did others know that too? Did they all feel the same way? There's ways that we can tease out the details of this. And how did it feel to be under that leadership? How did you at age 8, and how old was she?
She
would
was
have
6
been
years older than I, so 14 at that
14 years old, well, that's a big age difference at that point, right?
Mhm.
So, how do you feel with your 14-year-old leader guiding you along? Does that give you trust? Do you feel protected? Do you feel worried? Do you feel taken past your limit? All of these things, all those questions come up, and all of them could be explored and teased out.
Mhm.
And I don't say this because you have to go on and write all this necessarily, but I want to say it for all of us. This is each detail is a whole world. Each detail is a whole world. You know, if you just start to describe sometimes one detail, it'll uncover all sorts of things. You know, you just start to talk about what your bicycle looked like. And you say, oh, you know, it was this kind of bicycle. It was this color of blue. It had this shape to it. And then you remember the feeling of those handlebars. What were the handlebars like? And these kinds of things then trigger your next memory. And the next memory guides you along. You go, oh God, actually now I remember a story. One time we got back even later than normal, whatever, you know. So this is really valuable to realize that our stories aren't like these little tiny packages that are over and done with. Each thread goes off in a different direction potentially and opens up a new part of our experience. And sometimes you don't even know what you're trying to get to. So you experiment. You follow one little thread. You follow the bicycle, or you follow the thing about your older sister, or you follow the thing about what was the movie that you were going to one time, whatever it is. And then you explore and see how your experience speaks to you. And that's what's different about this. It's not about me trying to tell my story using my experience. It's me listening as my experience tells me what to write. It's sort of a flip. It's flipping it inside out. So thank you so much for sharing that. And anybody could have shared a story, and there's that same potential to follow the different threads. And you say to yourself, well, wait a minute, how do I pick which thread to follow? And I really want you to trust your gut. You just listen, you say, well, I don't know, I could talk about this or I could talk about that. And somewhere beneath your thinking is a little, you know, sort of a neon sign that looks like a finger pointing. It just says, that one, do that one. And sometimes you think to yourself, what? That's not even interesting. That's not a good story. Who cares what movie we went to? It's not going to matter. You know, you have all that chatter in your head. Don't worry about it. You're just goofing around. You're not going to publish this necessarily. It's not going to be the great memoir necessarily. This is you exploring. So you just explore, you go down that tunnel. Where does that tunnel lead me? And, you know, sometimes there's jewels and gold at the end of that tunnel. And sometimes you go down the tunnel, you think, what did I go down here? There's nothing down here. Okay, well, fine. You know, all you did is spend a little time writing. Now you can do something else. You can explore a different tunnel. And part of this is feeling that we are free. We are free to explore over here. We're free to explore over there. And we're not committed. We don't have to feel like this is the only direction I get to go in. That's part of the power of this. So any thoughts or comments before we move on tonight? Okay. I want to talk about the hero's journey. Finally, we get to our topic. And the thing about the hero's journey is that it's a journey of transformation. It's never a journey about you're already spectacular and everything's going great, and then that's the end. The hero's journey is always a process of getting lost, so to speak, not being sure of what's going on or where to go, of struggle, challenge, uncertainty, confusion, right? Think of any fairy tale. I don't know, maybe there's exceptions in fairy tales, but there's a lot of fairy tales where the whole point is you get lost. The main character gets lost in the forest, right? Or they marry the, what's it, Bluebeard or whatever. And then you're stuck in his house and you can't figure out what's going on. And there's all this creepy stuff going on. You know, now what? What's behind all these doors? Don't open those doors. Right? Or you get captured by the witch and she says, you have to do all these things in one night. Oh my God. How could I possibly, sort this out and do this and spin the whatever into gold or, So there's always this sense of tension. And every movie that we love, all the novels, the great operas, they're always about tension. Something goes wrong. There has to be something going wrong. Otherwise, it's not compelling. It's not human. If everything's perfect from the start to the finish, you tune out. You might watch one episode and you're done. So our lives are like this. Our own hero's journey is filled with tension and problems and confusion and mistakes. Think of what a big theme mistakes play in fairy tales, right? And then, you knock at the door and then the person says, who are you? And you say, oh, I'm so-and-so, the son of the miller down the road. And the door shuts. Oh, that's not what I was supposed to say. What am I supposed to say? I don't know. How am I going to get through this door? And I really think that this is something for us to explore as we look at our own hero's journey. What are the difficulties? What are the points of tension? Not to dwell on those and say life is only that, but to just identify them. And so what I want to do is I want to actually tell a story. And this is a Tibetan kind of folk tale. And I don't know why I'm kind of more familiar with the Tibetan tradition in some ways than I am with the Western tradition. So, and I guess I like using these because they're not familiar. They're not just the same familiar story that you've heard a million times. So this is the story of a journey, of a great journey. And this is the story of Lady Yeshe Tsogyal. And Lady Yeshe Tsogyal was a historic figure. I think she did actually live, but there's also lots of legends and tales around her. And as far as I can tell, she was the very first Tibetan to get enlightened. And she lived around 650 AD, something like that, right? So a long time ago. That's how this tale starts, long time ago. Yeshe Tsogyal was studying with a very famous Buddhist teacher named Padmasambhava. And Padmasambhava said to her, he said, you've reached a certain point on your path as a Buddhist. You need now, he said through my, enlightened awareness, he said, you need to go to Nepal, and there's a young man there named Atara Tsale, and you two need to become romantically involved. And that's actually the next step on your path. And she lived in Tibet, and from Tibet to Nepal is not a quick journey, especially in 650 AD. And so Yeshe Tsogyal, who had a lot of faith in her teacher, set off walking. And she was already very, very accomplished at this point. She was a very highly skilled meditator. And of course, this is a legend, right? So she has kind of magical skills. And, but she's still got to walk, you know, I mean, you got magical skills, but guess what? You still got to walk to Nepal. So she walks to Kathmandu, which takes her 2 months or something. And this is, I'll do the very shortened version of this, but this was a rough journey. This was a really rough journey, and she suffered. And when I say she suffered, like she got attacked by a gang of bandits, a woman alone walking in the wilderness of Tibet in 650 AD, and she gets attacked by a gang of bandits, you know, like it's bad. It's as rough as you would think, right? So she survived that and carried on in her journey. But that's the kind of difficulty she was up against. So you could think of that part of the journey. That's like one, if you drew, we're going to draw maps of our own journey tonight. But that would be a spot on the map, right? Being attacked by the bandits in the wilderness. So she then gets to Nepal. And all that her teacher said was go to the marketplace and you'll know who I'm talking about. So she goes to the marketplace and she's looking around, and then she sees him. And it's funny, I mean, you can actually read this. There's a book called Lady of the Lotus Born. That's her autobiography. A woman in 650 AD wrote an autobiography, right? You don't get those very often. It's not the easiest book to read because it's very ancient and from a different culture, but still, the moment when she sees him in the marketplace, she describes viscerally how it actually feels. I mean, she is very attracted to this individual. And so she goes up to him and she says, "Is your name Atara Tzale?" And he says, "Yes." He's intrigued. And she says, I'm here to, I was sent by my Buddhist teacher to be with you. And he says, well, I'm a slave. And he was enslaved, right? This is ancient times and there was a war, and somehow he ended up on the wrong side of the war and he ended up as a slave. So she goes to his owners and she says, listen, I'm here to do this. I've been sent by my Buddhist teacher and I want to free him from slavery. And the family who purchased him, as one did back in the day, says, you know, he's really great. Like, you know, we paid a lot of money for him and he's worth every penny. He's incredible. And honestly, we sort of feel like he's part of the family now, so we don't want to give him up easily. She said, well, is there anything I can do? And they said, listen, you seem very sincere. If you pay us the money that we paid for him, which is, you know, 500 gold coins or something, you know, whatever that was, you can free him from slavery. Well, she doesn't have any money. So what is she going to do? So she says, okay, I'm going to work on this. So here she is. I mean, she's wandering around. It's not even her country. And she's wandering around. What am I going to do? What am I going to do? And there was a war going on at that time. And the son of a very wealthy family died. He was killed in battle. And they brought him back to the house. And the family was wailing and weeping in lamentation for the loss of their son. And she happened to wander by and hear all this and came over and said, oh my God, what's happening? You know, I said, well, our son has been killed in battle. It's terrible. And so her compassion drew her to the family. And she said, you know, I have some training. I have some magical training. And I don't know if I can do this, but maybe I could help. And they said, listen, if you can help, we will pay any amount of money. So she did her tantric Buddhist magic, her legendary magic, and she points her finger at the guy's heart, and she ends up whispering something into his ear and all of this stuff, and poof, he comes back to life. And the family is overjoyed. And they give her her gold coins. They gave her 1,000 gold coins, and she takes it back to the owners of the Ataratsale. And she, instead of 500, she gives them 1,000, and they very happily release him. And then the two of them traverse back to Tibet, where they then, there's many, many chapters that follow about their life together and the power of their connection that was really a part of the instruction from her teacher. And they both became enlightened. Now, this story, you could picture it like it's on a map, right? I mean, you have the attacked by bandits, and then you have the marketplace, and then you have the family who owns Ataratsale, the slave, and then you have the family whose son got killed in battle, right? And then there's the journey back to Tibet. And so you could imagine this. And I want us to, part of our job tonight is going to be to draw our own map of our own journey. So what I want us to do here is to actually look at some maps. We are going to, let's see here. There we go. Let me share this with you. Right? These old style maps of a journey. Now, this is from Lord of the Rings. Anybody read or seen Lord of the Rings? And the idea here is that you have the key points and they're labeled, and then but it's not just a boring map with a line. This is not Google Maps. This is a kind of illustrated map. So we're symbolically representing the different parts of the map. And you've seen these old-fashioned maps, right? These ancient old-fashioned maps. And, what do you have here? You don't just have a place, you have a little illustration. And this is what I want us to do, is to actually illustrate in a very simple way. You don't have to be fancy about it unless you want to be. Illustrate the different parts on your life's journey. So some parts of your life might have, the swamp of despair, the swamp of depression, or you have, the cold mountains of my second marriage, or whatever. You've got the ferocious beasts of being an adolescent that are chasing you, whatever it is. Each of these points on the map, you could imagine traveling through this and illustrating these different points as you travel your journey. And part of what we're going to do here then is our homework's going to have to do with the writing that we do about this journey, the fairy tale that we create around our journey. Okay, so this is just for atmosphere. And what we're going to do then is to take the next 20 minutes to work on that ourselves, our life's journey. Okay, Do you have your art materials? Did you get my message about the art materials? And if not, you can just use a pen and paper. Any questions about that? Okay. All right, let's go ahead and start into that, and I'll check back in 20 minutes. And if you have any questions in the meanwhile, you can just turn on your microphone and ask them. 5 more minutes. 5 minutes. Oops, that was wrong. I just realized I set my alarm a little bit early. So it's an extra 2 minutes beyond that. So you have about 5 minutes right now. Okay, about 30 seconds left. Okay, let's start to gather again. And you might not be done, and that's okay. You could always fill in the rest later on. Getting a good start is really the important part. Stirring the creative juices. Before we talk about our homework for this week, I actually wanted to just check in about that exercise and see if anything came up for you. Was it hard to think of the different places on the map? Or was it easy? Did you get partway through and then you crossed it out and started over again? Did you remember new parts on the map? Anything interesting come up? Yeah, Lisa.
I was pleasantly surprised. At first, I thought, oh, this is overwhelming. My life is too long or too much or whatever. But then as I started it, I just jumped in, and then as I did that, it flowed. It flowed, and I feel like I got the bigger chunks of transformation / events / important parts. And I like that it's pictorial and kind of lyrical and colorful. It was helpful for me to have certain images because I I find that the image part is really important for my ability to conceive of ideas. The images really help. So I was happy with that exercise.
Oh, that's great. You don't have to if you don't want to, but is there just like one spot on the map that has a name that you would be willing to share with us?
Let's see, I have
Or more than one if you want.
I have the Marriage Mirage.
Great.
I have the Blissful Garden of Flower Children.
Oh yeah.
I have the Dungeon of Doom and Despair.
Yeah.
And then I have Lost in the Slow Death of Delusion.
Oh yeah. Yeah, those are good.
I have some other, and then I have some happier parts.
Yeah, that's really juicy though. Yeah, thank you so much.
Sure. Thanks.
Did I see a hand up there?
Yeah, I just want to say this was so fun and powerful. The breaking our story down into 3, I struggled with because there's a lot of one step forward, 2 steps back. I felt like I was moving in and out of parts of my life and going back and forth. This made the pictorial nature of it, as Lisa said, was a lot easier to flow, and it made it fun. It didn't make it so like gut clenching. It kind of made it a little bit fun. And yeah, I enjoyed that. It was really cool.
Mm-hmm. Good. I think that hopefully the homework will be more fun too this time around. We'll get to that in a minute, but that's great. And would you be willing to share just one spot on your map, or?
I have a couple that I like.
Yeah, go for it.
The Mountain of Reflection. It's got mirrors all top of it, and you have to climb up to see yourself. The Cloud of Invisibility, or Fog.
Oh yeah.
Okay, this one, the Sharp Stones of Dissatisfaction and Envy and Resentment.
Oh,
ouch.
Yeah. Oh, yes. Great. Thank you. Yeah. Is anybody else willing to share a spot on their map? Totally optional. Yeah, Kathy. You're muted.
I found that I had so many things going on in the state of California. Only later did I go to Washington State that I ran out of time to get to Washington State, where much of my life has taken place. But California was a life of great adventure, and from getting lost at sea in a little boat, and hikes into the mountains. And so anyway, that I made mine much more practical. It wasn't kind of
Wasn't quite as metaphorical.
yes, exactly right.
No, sure. Well, California could be volume 1, maybe, of your
Yeah, right.
of your multi-part journey. That's great. Anybody else? I don't want to cut anybody off. If anybody else wants to share any spots on their map, you could raise your hand in a minute too. Why don't I start to? Oh yeah, Mary, did you? Yeah. Let's see here. There we go.
Yeah, I had a couple that were sort of metaphorical. One is called The Swamp of Arthur, who is my oldest son, who is autistic and has been a real challenge for 37 years.
Great.
And then
Yeah.
I had The Fire of Divorce.
Ah,
Those are two that are vivid images. The rest of them are circles with words inside of them.
sure.
I couldn't
Sure.
come up with a good image for them.
That's fine. Yeah, maybe the images come later for those too. Or maybe it's sort of, you're just searching for what is the image? What is the metaphor that actually captures that part of my life? And maybe there's a reason why that part of life is hard to find an image for. This is great. This is all very, very helpful. And our homework this week is to write a fairy tale. And it's the fairy tale of you. So the thing with this, it may seem kind of whimsical or lighthearted or, not serious enough. But actually the fairy tale, like Joan mentioned, makes it a little more fun, which allows us to talk about certain parts of our life without the heaviness, without quite so much heaviness. So it's not me that went through that experience. This is the queen who left her kingdom, and now she traveled through the swamp of despair. Whatever, okay, that's fine. She had to climb the mountain of reflection. She went through the fire of divorce. So whatever that is, and so you write it in the third person. You don't write it as me, I'm doing this. You write it as the character. And fairy tales, by their nature, they can have dark stuff in them, right? Like the witch in the Hansel and Gretel, gets them in the house and she's going to cook them. I mean, that's dark, right? But somehow in a fairy tale, it's not so heavy. It's scary, but it's not overwhelming. And I think that actually allows us a little bit of a buffer sometimes from overwhelming experience so that we can actually lightly tread through it. And the lightness actually allows some insight to come through. So in your fairy tale, and by the way, if it's too much to write the whole fairy tale and you just want to focus on, the mountain of mirrors or whatever, that's fine. Just write that part. Like the life of Yeshe Tsogyal is actually a whole volume that's this thick. But I just told you one tiny part of it. But that one tiny part had a lot going on. So maybe you just want to focus on one little part that's interesting to you. But regardless, what I want you to do is to start it like a fairy tale. So it starts off with the phrase, once upon a time. Once upon a time, there was a something. Who? What is the character? Is it a queen? Is it a goblin? Is it a dwarf who lives under the mountain? Whatever it is, right? There's a magical goat. I don't care what it is. Whatever feels juicy to you is what you should use. And it's interesting. You say, well, again, well, what do I choose? How do I choose that? Listen for that little voice. And maybe it's just kind of a little impulse, a weird little impulse. And you think, well, that's a dumb idea,
Do you-
but it
right,
could be
do you mean
great.
do you mean, I'm sorry, do you mean to represent yourself?
Yes.
Okay, I just.
To represent yourself. So, what is your character? What is your main character? Once upon a time, there was a magical toaster. It doesn't matter to me, right? This is really for you to choose and explore. And then the ending of the whole fairy tale should be, and so the magical toaster, something, is still in that swamp today, searching for the way out. And so the magical toaster found the summit of the mountain of mirrors. And so the magical toaster, got their law degree and became the magical toaster king of the law firm. I don't, again, the point is that it needs to end with that kind of fairy tale ending. Fairy tale beginning, fairy tale ending, that'll help you get into the mood. And it's got that kind of sing-songy quality of a fairy tale, right? This is not like writing an essay for a job interview. You can get a little playful with it. And okay, the last thing I want to say about this is, like real fairy tales, it needs to be true. Right? Now, fairy tales are completely made up, and there needs to be something true in there. So we're not trying to just whitewash everything and get rid of stuff that we don't want and just replace it with some inane story. We actually want to be able to express what's true through this imaginary language, through these imaginary characters. So, in the frozen mountains of my second marriage or whatever, there lives a ice goblin or whatever. And what is the interaction there? It's not, again, tension. This is about tension and confusion and traveling through these difficult places and finding our way through. So what is the journey through? And we don't have to shy away from any of that, especially because it's just a fairy tale, right? It's just a fairy tale. So we don't have to be worried about it. Well, we've come to the end of our class tonight. Thank you all so much for traveling our journey today. And I'll be very interested to hear, and remember, if you want to share, you can record like we did at the start. And that's true throughout the entire course. If you want to share something anytime, a night or day, you can record it and send it out through the class forums. And if you have any questions about that, let me know. Yeah, Lisa.
I'm a little confused about not about the assignment, but about how you're communicating with us. Like, I got some emails from you, but is there also like the page? Does it? I'm just confused about how it's all set up.
Sure. That's a good question. That's so there's the course homepage
Yeah.
that you've all been able to log into. And on the right sidebar of those pages is a little link to the forums. So that's the place where we communicate with each other. The pages of the course, I'll add in more pages to the course as we go along. And those are where I put kind of the instructions and things like that.
And those also come as emails? Or because I'm seeing other people's messages, but I don't know. I feel like it.
Yeah, that happens in the forums.
Okay.
And the course forums is where it gets sent out as emails to everybody.
Okay.
Yeah.
But I can
Yeah.
also see it there. Or-
Yeah,
or-
yeah, exactly. So like if you go into the course and you click in the forums,
I should
you know,
see all this.
yeah, even if you haven't checked your emails, you could go back and look at things. And I really would recommend listening to that story I told about Milarepa that's listed in the forums. That's a good one to connect in with.
Okay, I did that. Thanks.
Okay, let's go ahead and wave goodbye to each other tonight. So have a good evening,
Thank you.
and
Greg.
I'll see you again next week.
Okay,
Take care.
bye-bye.
Bye.
Right.
Thanks.